Miami Dolphins coaching news in full effect with an offensive coordinator request, as well as a potential defensive coordinator that could be the next in Miami. We have both sides of the ball to talk about. We're going to start by talking about a potential offensive coordinator because on Thursday morning, before the introductory press conferences of Sully and Hafley, the Dolphins requested an interview with Houston Texans quarterback coach Gerard Johnson for the OC vacancy. This is why you follow me on Twitter, because outside of our YouTube shows, I have you covered with the news. And speaking of news, let's get into it. Who is Jerrod Johnson? A young but potentially rising coach in the National Football League who is obviously a candidate for the offensive coordinator position in Miami. Well, he actually played college football at Texas A&M for 4 years, was a UDFA in 2011, so he's still relatively young, 37 years old. He bounced around practice squad. He never got any run in the NFL from 2011 to 2018, but he spent time in the UFL, the XFL, as well as on, 7 different practice squads? Eagles, Steelers, Seahawks, Bears, Ravens, and Cowboys. 6, by the way. And he has gotten a start in coaching back in 2018, 2019 under the Walsh Diversity Fellowship, but has now gained legit coaching roles in the NFL. It started in 2020 when he was a offensive quality control coach for the Colts in 2 years. Then gets promoted by the Vikings and becomes their assistant quarterback coach in 2022. And then gets another promotion, joining the Houston Texans in 2023, where he's held the same position as quarterback coach for 3 straight years. And obviously, you look at the quarterbacks that Johnson has coached in his time as an assistant or full-time quarterback coach, and they're 3 relatively solid quarterbacks, right? Kirk Cousins with the Vikings in 2022. That year, if you don't remember, was the year Minnesota was unbelievably good, but lost at home in the wild card round to the New York Giants. And then he goes to Houston, where he coached up rookie C.J. Stroud for 3 years, as well as Davis Mills subbing in from time to time. But you look at all 3 of these quarterbacks, and I can positively say, well, they've all been competent and legit starting quarterbacks at one time or another in that stretch. And I'll say this, when you're thinking about Jerrod Johnson as an offensive coordinator candidate, he certainly was not on my radar whatsoever. We made multiple videos talking about potential OC candidates. Johnson was never mentioned. And I think this is a good thing, because when we've talked about potential OC candidates, we've always mentioned people that have a connection to Jeff Hafley in some regard, but also are rising candidates. I think this is a good sign, though, because it tells me that Hafley, the front office, when they're thinking about putting together this coaching staff in Miami underneath a first-time head coach, they're leaving no stone unturned. They are looking at any and every potential offensive coordinator candidate there is, so they can get the right guy to spearhead this rebuild and find the next QB1 of the Miami Dolphins. I think it's a good thing that Jerrod Johnson's being interviewed, even if he doesn't get the job. But what say you? Would you hire Jerrod Johnson based off the brief learning experience we had today about the former Texas A&M quarterback? Type Y for yes or N for no. I'm not against it because I don't know him individually, and who knows how he will interview with the Miami Dolphins. But I will still come here on Thursday night. We're filming this, going out Friday morning on the channel, that I think Brian Angelichio is going to be the next OC in Miami. He's the Vikings tight end coach and pass game coordinator. He's held that position since 2022. So actually, Angelichio and Jerrod Johnson were on the same offensive staff that 1 year in 2022. We talked about Angelichio in depth on Wednesday, but this is someone who has a very strong connection with Jeff Hafley. And I've heard through the grapevine from a couple people that he is probably the favorite to become the OC for the Miami Dolphins. You saw some of his background there, but the connection between him and Haf is unbelievable. I mean, they coached together 4 different places for damn near a decade. They were together for 4 years at the University of Pittsburgh. Then they both went on Greg Schiano's coaching staff at Rutgers in 2011 before jumping ship to Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers for 2 years and then doing the same exact thing with the Cleveland Browns. They ultimately went their separate ways after that. Angelichio went to the Green Bay Packers as a tight end coach. Jeff Hafley went to the 49ers on that defensive staff. But they're obviously well acquainted. And if Hafley feels like he is in line to get an opportunity as an offensive coordinator, then who am I to blame him? Because we know there's going to be a strong chemistry and a strong rapport between your head coach and OC, which is something that is very beneficial. And we'll continue to talk about OC candidates. But today's show is brought to you by Ethos. After watching someone close to me go through loss, I saw how quickly grief can turn into financial stress. That experience changed how I think about protecting my future and my family. Life insurance isn't about expecting the worst, but it's about making sure the people you love are supported no matter what. And that's why I recommend life insurance through Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. Now, application times may vary, but there's no medical exam. You just answer a few health questions. And as of March 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos right now by going to ethos.com/NFL Daily. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get your free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That is ethos.com/NFL Daily. Application times and rates may vary. So we talked about Brian Angelichio a little bit today. We've mentioned Jerrod Johnson. Those are certainly OC candidates for Miami. I think when you start to look at who else can get the OC job, I've talked a lot about Steve Shimko, who has worked with Jeff Hafley at Boston College, also is the current Dallas Cowboys quarterback coach. Bobby Slowik worked alongside Hafley in 2017 and 2018 with the San Francisco 49ers. That's an option. He's been an OC in the past with the Houston Texans, and he's currently on the Dolphins coaching staff. Wonder if he gets retained in his current role or maybe the OC. But I think other connections like Jason Vrable, Sean Mannion, Luke Getsy are someone that makes sense. But if we are going to go the route of leaving no stone left unturned and not necessarily targeting someone that has a already established working relationship with Jeff Hafley, then I'm throwing the bag at Nate Scheelhaase. Heck, I'd make him one of the top and highly paid offensive coordinators in the National Football League. Pass game coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams right now. He has gotten multiple head coaching interviews. I don't think he gets a job as a head coach, but who knows? Maybe the Cleveland Browns do something unexpected, or maybe the Las Vegas Raiders or Arizona Cardinals, but it doesn't seem like it's his time now. But he's already got multiple interviews. So he's thought of as a future head coach. I want him in Miami calling plays because that could be really beneficial to not only Scheelhaase, but the Miami Dolphins. I would consider the same thing with Davis Webb, who is the quarterback coach and pass game coordinator for the Denver Broncos. Does a tremendous job lately with Bo Nix. We'll see how Jarrett Stidham plays this Sunday in the AFC Championship game. But those two are early 30s and getting head coaching interviews. They're likely a little bit ahead of schedule in terms of getting a head coaching gig. But the next logical step for each of those two guys is to become an offensive coordinator. Now, where do they become an OC? Maybe it's in Miami underneath Jeff Hafley, even if the Dolphins and Hafley don't have a connection in the past with Webb or Scheelhaase. I'd throw the bag at those two as potential OCs in Miami. And we'll have you covered this entire offensive coordinator search, so make sure you subscribe, and when the Dolphins do hire an OC, we will have you covered on the channel, so don't miss a thing. But now let's talk about a rising defensive coordinator candidate in terms of following Jeff Hafley to Miami. And I don't think this is a guy that is likely going to get a DC job anywhere else, but could follow Haf from Green Bay to Miami. Now, before we get into this individual that I've heard as a potential candidate, I do want to make it very clear that Jeff Hafley is going to be calling defensive plays. He said that on Thursday in his introductory press conference. We reported that on Wednesday night as well. He said specifically, it's very important to me. The details will be exactly how I want them. He also had an interesting quote where he said, during the season, I'm going to be the head coach and defensive coordinator, because he's calling plays, but he's also going to be the head coach in the offseason. It was a very weird way to say it. I don't think I'm articulating it very well here, but it's very fascinating to see the way he described it. It's what Matt LaFleur does in Green Bay with the offense and then the offseason, what Kyle Shanahan does in San Francisco. He's trying to pull from these other coaches that he's learned underneath, and they're two good coaches to pull from because Shanahan and LaFleur are both top 5 coaches in the NFL. But what does this mean for the defensive coordinator position with Miami? Well, I would expect, if Hafley is calling plays, like you said, to have a guy who obviously has not called defensive plays in the past join him in Miami, but there is a lot of familiarity to where that coordinator knows what to expect, knows what Hafley will want to do with personnel, with game planning, schematic points of view. It's going to be someone he's really familiar with, is basically what I'm trying to say. So that brings me to these 4 guys. Sean Duggan, the current Packers linebacker coach. Tem Lukabu, the Jaguars linebacker coach, who was the defensive coordinator for multiple seasons underneath Hafley in Boston College. But then you also have to look at DeMarcus Covington, a former DC in New England 2024, Packers D-line coach in 2025, and then Vince Igbase, the Packers assistant defensive linebacker coach. Or D-line coach, not linebacker, excuse me. But when you look at these 4, I've heard a lot, and I'm thinking about Sean Duggan, who is a very interesting name because he is still very young in learning how to be a high-level coach in the NFL. I mean, the guy's 32 years old. So he is almost the opposite of Nate Scheelhaase and Davis Webb. Early 30s, but rising in the NFL coaching world. Played college football at Boston College. Now, not underneath Jeff Hafley, but there is an unbelievable connection between Duggan and Hafley. They've been working together since 2019. That has basically been almost the entire career of Sean Duggan as a coach. You saw he began coaching as a grad assistant in 2015 with Boston College, but also was a grad assistant coach on Hafley's defensive staff in 2019 with Ohio State. Follows him to Boston College for all 4 years, 2020, 21, 22, 23. Was the linebacker coach for 3 of those years. And in the final year of both Duggan and Hafley being in Boston College, he was the co-defensive coordinator and linebacker coach. Hafley makes the jump to the NFL to become the Packers DC. So does Duggan. Becomes a defensive assistant and then gets promoted in this past year where he was the Packers linebackers coach. So I think there is another promotion potentially in the works for Duggan. Following Hafley, once again, those guys have such a strong connection, such a good working relationship. We already know Hafley is going to be calling the plays, but Duggan is a key piece there in terms of what Hafley is trying to implement in structure defensively in Miami. So I think Duggan's definitely going to be a top option. And we've talked a lot about Anthony Weaver potentially returning since Hafley and Weaver worked together in Cleveland in 2014 and 2015. Well, now that we know Hafley's calling plays, I think there is no chance Weaver returns. Now it's all about if Weaver gets a head coaching job and Miami's going to get some comp picks out of it, or Weaver goes to be a DC elsewhere. There's some buzz that he could follow John Harbaugh and be the next defensive coordinator for the New York Giants. But hopefully he gets a head coaching job because he's a great person. And if the Dolphins do not hire a defensive coordinator before Anthony Weaver gets a head coaching job, and that is very specific because if they hire a DC to replace him before he gets a head coaching job, they would not be eligible for the 2 third-round comp picks they would get if he gets a head coaching job before they fill that DC vacancy. No, there was a lot there, but I think you understood. And if anything happens, we'll have you covered on Twitter before we make content here on YouTube, so go give me a follow.